I do agree with you that protection needs to be for the Sasquatches right now. Where me and you differ is you say that I shouldn't have killed a Bigfoot, and I say it needed to be done. 95% of people did not believe in Bigfoot. Now it's going to turn 100% people do believe in Bigfoot after this, and this will vindicate a lot of people that's been put down. This will help people come out on top. It won't help the species at first because every father and son is going to go out there and try to bag one. That's what I want to stop.
Now, you said on your Facebook page a few days ago that you thought my effort was too little too late.
Correct.
But the idea that I have for you is that it doesn't have to be too little or too late if we all join together with a great deal of energy and passion. And I don't know that you're unified in your standpoint. It seems that you're all over the map. In a private message to me on Facebook, you said you didn't know why I was so upset because you promised never to kill another Sasquatch. And yet 16 days ago on your show, you said, and I quote, "I will kill a female Bigfoot, 100%. And if we can use Sasquatch to save human lives or to cure cancer, then f*** it, let's kill them all."
I will kill a female Bigfoot if I have the chance, and that is 100% true. And I'm sorry for people like Christopher Noel. Christopher Noel's a great guy, but sometimes he's a pansy little girl. I don't think that they should go out and be slaughtered. I think that there should be a law in place to protect the Sasquatch. But on the other hand, if my child was sick and the only thing that can cure my child was a Sasquatch or something from a Sasquatch, then yes, I would go out there and kill one.
See, I just don't think you can have it both ways in terms of a moral standpoint. Because either you have to argue for and work for the protection of the species, or decide that they are less important than us and can therefore be used by us for whatever purpose we see fit.
Well, I do believe they're less important than us.
Well, that gets to the heart of things, and I'm glad you brought that up. Because this is the question that I was asking you the other day on your Facebook page and complaining that you weren't answering, which is just, what is the basis for your viewpoint that they are less important than we are?
Because we're human. We built the world that we live in, and it is really important to protect our own people. Sasquatch is an animal. I mean, I think it's kind of like the food chain, and we're above them on the food chain. And I believe that if one of us are sick, I think that we should come before a Sasquatch. I don't really think that they know exactly what we are or who we are or even interested in us. I don't think that you can compare a Sasquatch to a human, because what I killed was a monster.
I'm glad you brought that up too, because that brings me to another question I have for you. I know that you're portraying them as monsters, and this one that you killed as a monster, because of course it's in your best interest to portray it that way. But what is your definition of monster?
I want you to think of your deepest, darkest fear and multiply it by 10 times. And then that's where you will have Sasquatch. I think that your mistake is that you think of Sasquatch the way it's been portrayed years and years and years. But in reality, the Sasquatch is a monster with double rows of teeth, can open his mouth so wide, and he attacked a cameraman.
Well, do you think that the Sasquatch in question on September 6th might have had some motivation to attack that cameraman, given that you had just shot him in the fucking back?
I am not calling him a monster because he attacked a cameraman. I am calling him a monster because he has double rows of teeth and can open his mouth super wide. You have no idea what you're talking about.
I don't think we understand yet just how they are related to us. And I also don't think that having double rows of teeth and the ability to open their mouth really wide qualifies them as non-human. I mean, double rows of teeth is just like us, except with an extra row of teeth. They still, to me, are much more like us, vastly more like us than anything else on Earth. Getting to DNA, do you know the distinction, and I didn't know this until very recently, between mitochondrial DNA and nuclear DNA?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Well, mitochondrial DNA is found in our cells in these little critters that buzz around called mitochondria. And it's a very simple loop of DNA that goes back to our mother and her mother before us, her and her mother before her, all the way back to the original mother of any line of organisms. Whereas the nuclear DNA is much, much more complicated and comes from both mother and father's side. Well, a lot of geneticists, not just Melba Ketchum, but many others, have tested Sasquatch samples and found that the mitochondrial DNA is very, very close to human DNA. Now, this suggests that at some point back in the day, 15, 20, 30,000 years ago, a human female crossbred with a male of another species that we don't know what it was. And perhaps that species was more the monster that you're talking about, and that's fine. But if that monster mixed with what is essentially our species, then they are intimately related to us.
Well, if a scientist tells me it's not related to human, I tend to believe that.
I mean, but how could it not be? I mean, if they look so much like us, they talk, they use language.
I have never heard them talk, but I did see the damage they caused to a deer. A human could not cause this. This thing looked like it grabbed the deer and just ripped it apart. Describe the intensity that goes with seeing this thing in person, Chris. I'm talking about 4 times the size of me, just in pure mass. Everything is different. The organs are different. Everything is different.
This is actually a pretty good debate because it brings forward some of the central themes that we'll all be talking about over the next few months and years. The San Antonio situation, given that it was only a few days long and ended in slaughter, lacks almost all of the subtleties that habituation sites contain, because habituation sites last for years and sometimes for decades, and they're almost all subtlety, because that's the nature of the interaction that we have with this kindred species. Going forward, we will be learning more and more about the nature of this dance that we've had for eons with this zoological next of kin. And it is a necessarily gradual learning process, a learning curve that must be undertaken with respect and with patience. And of course, it can't be accomplished in any sort of expedition that probes into an area for just a few days and is driven by the egocentric desire to dominate and kill the subject in question. Rick Dyer is unfortunately dead wrong about the fact that Sasquatch is not interested in us. They are actually fascinated by us. Not all of them. It's not a monolithic situation. But given how profoundly and intimately related to us they are, Although we do not have chapter and verse yet on how they are intimately related to us, that is yet to unfold. But given this relationship, it is natural that there is this mutual gravitation that is seen at habituation sites. And I think that they would be much better off, they'd be much less likely to be known by us or believed in by the majority of human beings if they would just not come around, if they wouldn't knock on trees, if they wouldn't make other sounds such as banging on the sides of our houses, tapping on our windows, peering into our windows even, vocalizing, mimicking our voices, and also using their own language that habituators can hear. These overtures are part of an incremental process of familiarization and knowledge building between our two species. Sasquatch is torn because while on the one hand they can't just come and be with us because we represent danger and in fact death to them, as demonstrated by our entire history with nature and by the last few months of the Rick Dyer situation. But on the other hand, they are, as I said before, fascinated by us because we are deeply ingrained in one another's journeys on this planet. They spy on us, they learn our routines down to the inflection and the nuance so that they can both avoid clashing with us and so that they can learn about us and be entertained by our behavior. Almost every habituator has heard not only Sasquatch mimicking our language and animal sounds, but also speaking their own language. If you want to learn more about this, you can refer to the work of Scott Nelson, who was a career Navy cryptolinguist, which means that he spent thousands and thousands of hours listening to human voices and to language and translating that language and extracting messages from it, from our enemies and potential enemies. He then turned his attention over the last 4 or 5 years to Sasquatch language, which has been recorded at various sites around North America. Please take a look at videos called Sasquatch Language 1 and Sasquatch Language 2 on YouTube, which will give you a good introduction and I hope will whet your appetite to learn more about Scott Nelson's work. What really bothers me about this situation, besides the ambush and killing of this Sasquatch, is that a golden opportunity was squandered here. I mean, people at habituation sites work for years to try to gain the trust of a Sasquatch or a family of Sasquatches, and that species is extremely stingy with their trust. And here you had a situation where this individual had lost his fear and he would come back consistently and it seems predictably, because if he came back later on the same day that you had greeted him with a freaking rifle and two huge cameras were basically in his grill, and that's just an incredible stroke of fortune. You know, even cameras usually are enough to scare a family of Sasquatches away from a habituation site for a long time or forever. And nevertheless, this guy came back that night. So you could have pushed this situation in a peaceful direction of increasing the richness of the interaction between you folks and him, and learned what he was like, learned who he was, learned how he thinks, learned how he talks, maybe even begun to be able to communicate with him back and forth, and to get minutes and minutes on end, maybe hours of perfect HD footage of him. I have a feeling that there's a big silent group out there listening to us. It might not be the majority, but people who feel similarly to how I feel, if not exactly how I feel. And I want to sort of mobilize us toward this common goal. So I'm initiating a movement. Eventually, it'll be a march on Washington sometime late this year or next year. It is facebook.com/stopshootingbigfoot. I'm not important. Rick is not important. What is important is the entire stance of the human race toward this kindred species and how we are going to move forward together from here.
I would like to say something that no one would ever take you serious if it wasn't for a death of a Sasquatch. Now you have hope because of me to get this done.